The topic of today's podcast is lesson planning. In this podcast, you will hear from two teachers, Miss Alicia and Miss Latofat, who give us a glimpse into the process they go through to plan meaningful, engaging, and thoughtful lessons. Both teachers spoke about the key elements in their lesson plans. Do you use any particular template to put together your lesson plans?
Not really. I mean, I've used a variety of templates kind of over the years. I think I've done away with the templates that have the whole like, what materials are required, what what do the students need, what do you need? Because I sort of know that already in the back of my mind, so I don't worry about writing that down anymore. Whereas that used to be part of what I would be really concerned with, like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna need to have access to PowerPoint, or I'm gonna need to have chart paper, or this or that, that kind of thing. I already sort of know in the back of my mind, so I don't worry about that so much. But really, the biggest thing for me in any template is what are our overarching goals for this unit, and then what's our particular goal for that day, and then essentially how we can get there, and then what's the follow-up, which is the homework. How are they going to practice it and reinforce it at home.
Good. So how much detail do you put in your lesson plans?
In my lesson plan, I just write the topics, what I'm going to teach. I don't describe it because I already know what I'm going to teach. I just, in short, I write the warm-up activity, for example, and I write the name of the activity. And for example, for reading, the topic is compare and contrast. I just write the topic. For example, for writing, it is informative paragraph or a descriptive paragraph. I just write the topic. I don't describe the topic.
Okay. Both teachers spoke about the importance of being responsive to the students' needs, looking for signs when students aren't getting a concept, and being flexible about making changes to their lesson plans. While you're teaching, do you ever change what you planned for that day?
Yeah. Oh, all the time. All the time. Yeah, because, well, particularly at this time of year, but in general, you have to be responsive to what kind of shows up in the class that day. So, depending on sort of how tired or focused students seem, it may not be the day to introduce a new concept. Like, you just kind of get that feeling, or I assess that at the beginning. So I try to be as responsive as possible to what it is that they're going to need based on kind of the nature of the state of mind when they come in. And thankfully, I feel like we have some of that flexibility here. You can't always do that. But, for today's a great example. I had planned to, finish up the unit that we were working on, but when they came in today, I could see that they were kind of scattered and all over the place, and that we really needed another 2 days of review and reinforcement. So, I had to switch up what we were doing.
Okay, and do you have like things in your back pocket to do when things aren't going as planned?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any times when you have planned something for your lesson and it doesn't go the way you plan? And if so, what do you do about that?
Oh, it happens.
Yeah.
When I write my lesson plan and I go through it, and sometimes what is on my lesson plan, I don't work on it. Because when I see the student is stuck in this topic, I leave this and I talk about it, I explain all about it, and it takes time.
So you look to see, are they getting it?
Yes.
You're not just only following your lesson plan.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. I often struggle with pacing and timing in my lesson plans, so I was keen to hear what Miss Alicia had to say about this. You're creating your lesson plans or you're thinking about your lesson. How do you, one of my challenges is, I will assign like certain times, for things, but they're not always right.
They're never right for me still.
Yeah.
Still never ever right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I first started teaching, I would do a lesson plan that I thought was for one day, and it would literally last me 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I've sort of gotten better with that. That's what brings me out of this. No. But yeah, absolutely. I just chronically overplan.
Yeah.
Overplan. Yeah, that's really, which I think is probably better than underplanning.
Yeah,
then you're kind of stuck like, oh, what are we going to do now? And it wastes time.
Because I was just kind of thinking that if you hadn't done that over planning at the beginning, you couldn't get to a point where you just kind of write your ideas for each day. I mean, you probably had to do that at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And then get your groove and figure things out, and then get to this point. But I really like what you said about just being responsive to your students and being flexible. And that's a hard thing when you've kind of planned every minute, right?
Right, and sometimes it can make it really hard and frustrating for you as the teacher too, because you might have planned like, great, we're addressing this new concept today, and then they're just completely not ready when they come into class that day, and then you end up having to spend 5 days sort of going over it and reinforcing it, whereas if you had just let them have that day for review of the stuff you've done already before introducing the new concept, everyone would be on track faster, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when the students aren't in the zone that you feel like they need to be to learn new concepts or do what you had planned, what kinds of things do you do? You do the review of things?
Yeah, so I usually, if they're there, then I will try to give them some kind of activity for reinforcement of what we've already done in that unit. So whether it's a game or it's some kind of other reinforcement activity, something like that. So kind of a lot of things to have in the back pocket. But with those, I don't necessarily plan them ahead of time anymore. So it's not like I think, okay, here's my extra bag of tricks for if this day they're not ready and they need to do some review. But I guess it's like other activities that I've used over the years, and I'll just kind of think on the spot, oh gosh, they're really still struggling with irregular verbs. We're not ready to move on. We should do this game that we've done in the past, like that kind of thing.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you so much. Miss Letafat smiled when I asked her if her lesson plans go according to plan. Are there any times when you have planned something for your lesson and it doesn't go the way you plan? And if so, what do you do about that?
Oh, it happens.
Yeah.
When I write my lesson plan and I go through it, and sometimes what is on my lesson plan, I don't work on it, because when I see the student is stuck in this topic, I leave this and I talk about it, I explain all about, and it takes time.
So you look to see, are they getting it?
Yes.
You're not just only following your lesson plan.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. When I asked Miss Alicia how she plans her lessons with differentiation in mind, she said this. One of the things I'm learning in this program, and I'm seeing also in my classes, is students at different levels, whether it's English level, age level, interest level, learning style, all those kinds of things, and differentiation comes up a lot. In your lesson plans, or in your thinking of your lessons, do you think of differentiation, and if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and when you're in a small school like this, or any kind of, you know, smaller sort of learning environment, there's always a massive amount of variation in any given class. So you just have to. I mean, I'm always looking at, again, going back to the goal. So what's the goal and where do students need to be? And then really thinking about individuals. So how is this person going to get there, and how's that person going to get there? And they may be sort of different paths.
Yeah. So do you give them, like, if you're doing some kind of activity or something in class, do you give them variations of the activity?
I might, depending on the activity. And also, particularly with, I think, high school age, I want to be very careful about that, because I never want someone to feel like, oh, I'm doing something that's less than, because then that sort of,
like dumbing it down.
Yeah, and that sort of, works negatively with their motivation to learn. And on the flip side, you don't want the people who are really excelling and they've already got that concept to just feel like they're getting more work. But you also don't want them sitting there not doing anything because they've mastered it and the other ones are. So I think it's really finding a balance of, well, what's going to be put each person in their zone of proximal development. I'm sure you guys have studied Vygotsky, right?
Yeah, well, not yet.
Okay, well, you will. When you do your educational psychology, you will.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's that place where the learning is interesting and challenging enough that they're motivated, and not so hard that they're, kind of starting to shut down a little bit because it's too difficult, but not so easy that they're just feeling like they can sail through it. So it's finding that place where they are learning and it's challenging, but not so challenging that they are not motivated to continue.
So when you're planning your lessons, you're thinking about that.
Exactly.
Once you get to know the students and their level and things like that.
Yeah. So in that way, it's always great to know as much as you can about them before they come into the class, because then you can really get a sense of what's going to work for them.
Okay. When I asked Miss Alicia about starting with the big idea or with the activities, she offered the following insight. That you always look at the unit and you think about, okay, what's the ultimate goal? What kinds of things would we do to get to that goal? How much time do you think you spend planning? Like,
for a particular lesson or a particular unit?
Both. Yeah.
That's a really good question. I would say before I start a unit, probably a couple of hours at least, just to kind of think through the overall plan and, sort of a blueprint of what will happen over the course of that, 2 weeks to a month that we're going to spend on that unit. So a couple of hours with that. And then for each individual day's lessons, I probably spend about an hour. For the preparation of those lessons. So really, I think it ends up being about an hour for 3.5 hours of teaching.
And how do you, when you're planning those lessons, one of the things that I struggle with, and maybe it's a first-time teacher or something like that, is that I start thinking of the activities first, and I'm learning in this, module that we got to start with the big idea, what's the ultimate goal, and then, because, I'm always thinking about how am I going to engage these students, so I just start thinking that way, but I'm learning that we should be doing it the other way.
Well, yes and no. I mean, if you have an idea for a great activity, usually if you think it's a great activity, it's because you know your students and you know that they would respond well to it, because you have that in the back of your mind. So if there's a way to work it in to help them reach that goal, then I don't think that that's a bad way.
So you could...
activities are just a means to an end, so you have to have that end goal in mind. But I don't think it's a bad thing to sort of say. I mean, once in a while I've done that too. Like, oh my gosh, what a neat concept to think about, interviewing someone and making a podcast on it or something. And then, okay, so could that be part of one of the units that we're doing? Does that fit in? And then you can look at what you have planned over the year and, and do it that way. And I don't think that's a bad thing to do.
Well, good, because that is so nice to hear, because I finished both interviews by asking Miss Alicia and Miss Letafat for advice to new teachers. This is what they had to say. For like a new teacher like me or any new teacher, what advice would you give in terms of how to develop a lesson plan, what should be included, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's funny, and I guess when I think about this advice, I really think of myself as a beginning teacher, because this is the advice I would have given myself, is to be able to be more in the moment of being responsive to what the students need at that time. And that's really hard to do when you've developed like this really beautiful, like logical, extensive lesson plan that you want to use bit by bit. And I was like the queen of planning. I mean, my plans would be like so, just every single detail there. And I did that for years, and then I realized that a lot of what was happening is I was kind of like sailing through thinking, well, this is exactly, what's needed, but I wasn't able to be as, sort of responsive as I needed to be to individual needs with doing that kind of thing. Yeah. So I'm not saying err on the side of like don't plan anything and just wing it, but being willing to veer from what you have, I think, is really important. And so, I don't mean veer widely. I'm not talking. So let's talk specifics. I'm not talking about today our goal is and I'll just take an ESOL thing. Okay. Today our goal is that we're talking about third person S in the present tense, right? That would be a really boring goal, but let's just take it as an example. And and a student comes in and is really interested in talking about his science fair project. I'm not talking about that all of a sudden, that's what we spend the class doing, Right. What I'm talking about is, students coming in and, maybe they're feeling really frustrated because they don't really fully understand some of the other concepts in the simple present tense. So being willing to say, wait a minute, we have to back up. We're not ready to address this other issue right now. That kind of thing. Yeah. And for the case of a student who wants to talk about his science project, you'd probably spend some time talking about it and then go to your lesson. Well, a little bit. Yeah. To be honest, I don't do that much. And particularly in this school setting, because I feel like we have a lot of other time to interact with students, and so I'd be like, oh, that's really interesting. I'd love to see it. Let's look at it at the break time or something like that. Yeah. And because the periods are so short too, only 45 minutes, you just have such limited time that I don't like to take a lot of the valuable class time I have for those other things. But I think it's important for your relationship with the students, so I try to find other time to do it, you know. Whereas in sort of larger and more institutional settings, that's a challenge because you see those students and then you don't see them for the rest of the day, so it's harder to strike that balance. But here I try to kind of have an agenda on the board and stay as focused on our goals as we can. Yeah. Okay. Because they love to. What advice would you give to new teachers about lesson planning?
Okay, my advice for the new teacher is that lesson plan is very important because it helps you to know how to teach and what you're going to teach today. It shows you what you're teaching today. And another advice for my teacher is that every day in their lesson plan they should put one activity that encourages the students to learn before starting the lesson.
So there you have it, lesson planning tidbits from two teachers. To sum up, lesson planning is like a roadmap that helps you get to your destination. You need to have an idea of how you want to get to your destination and be ready for any detours along the way.